resilient economy. Number two, creating a clean transition fund. We've already created 55,000 clean energy jobs. We need to train and prepare more workers for good-paying jobs in Oregon's growing clean energy sector. And third, tackling wildfire mitigation work. Climate change has made wildfires more intense and more frequent. We must invest in fuels reduction, which will create jobs in rural Oregon and foster healthier landscapes. I deeply appreciate the actions of the legislature's Democratic leadership to allocate the necessary resources for state agencies to carry out this work. And I am particularly grateful for the Speaker of the House, Tina Kotek, and Senate President Peter Courtney for their leadership. I also would like to thank the attorneys at the Oregon Department of Justice who carefully reviewed this executive order to make sure that we are as ambitious as we can be while fully complying with existing laws and the Oregon Constitution. I look forward to working with Oregonians across the state on implementing this order in such a way that does not exacerbate existing economic disparities in our rural communities, our tribes, our low-income families, and our communities of color. Because we're all in this together. And if we can make progress on climate change, we just might have a world that we can pass on to our children. Thank you. I'll now sign the order, and then I'll take a few questions.
Everybody scoot in. Scoot in.
We want you all in the photo. We want your beautiful faces in the photo. And you'll know we have a lot of pens here. So I'm going to take my time and make sure I use every single pen. So I may have every single pen. I want you to be able to prove to your teachers that you were doing something very useful today. That's really helpful. Okay, we got Cleveland High students. We have South Salem High, the Saxons. Who else do we have? Newport High School. Newport High School, great. Who else? Sunset High School. Willamette University, go Bearcats. Walport Middle School, great. Anybody else? You're 5, you're not quite in school yet, right? Do you have a preschool? You have a preschool? Do you like your preschool? Good. Well, tell your preschool teacher you were doing something very important today. And who's today's their first visit to the Capitol? Anybody? You're all pros? I know some of you are pros.
Got a little one next to you down there. It's her first visit.
Your first visit? What a great day to be your work in the state capitol. Thank you. I hope you have enough time for everybody. That's not the prettiest signature I've ever had.
Pretty stuff.
All right. Executive Order 2004. There you have it. I'm going to answer a few questions because I expect the questions of you, and you guys are welcome to stay here or head out, whatever you want to do.
We're going to take a few questions. It's getting a little bit warm in here, so we'll be quick. But members of the media, please.
Can I just ask, what are you going to do if there's a legal objection to this?
Look, my team and I worked very, very closely with the Department of Justice to make sure that this executive order is in full compliance with Oregon statutes and the Oregon Constitution. We're used to legal challenges. We have them on a regular basis.
Sorry.
Claire.
Will a legal challenge delay the implementation of the order?
Well, I anticipate we've got probably several months of a public rulemaking process, and a legal challenge is not likely to come until after that. So what I want to encourage is Oregonians to use their voices during that rulemaking process. It is a public and transparent and inclusive process.
Governor, will you release any advice you've received from the Department of Justice about the legal basis for the actions?
Sure.
And can you say what percentage of emissions will be covered? How effective are these actions compared to the two legislative attempts?
I think the last number I had was 54%. Kristen, do you want to?
That's in terms of DEQ's authority, but the directives the governor has issued are far-reaching across many different sectors. So it's a different approach to emissions reduction that will put the state on a trajectory to meeting those goals by 2035 and 2040.
It's the same
Governor,
goals.
does this executive order increase the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions to 80% of 1990 levels, where it used to be 75% by 2050?
It's the same emissions reduction goals in Senate Bill 1530, and the reduction is to 31 million metric tons equivalent by 2035 and 11 million tons by 2050.
And just a note, we'll make Kristen available to members of the media that want to delve into the details of the EO afterwards.
Governor, there were calls for you to take this action after the first walkout. Why did you wait for a second time?
First of all, I thought it was a priority for there to be a collaborative process around the legislation. I spent a significant amount of time meeting with stakeholders on both sides of the issue. We made substantial changes in response to the concerns that were raised in 2019. We had broad support for the legislation and frankly had a majority in votes in both houses, both the House and the Senate. I thought it was important for the legislature to give it another try, and they did exactly that. Unfortunately, the Republican walkout has caused me to take executive action.
Governor, could you contrast a little more this with Senate Bill 1530 and what it does and doesn't do, and what else you would like to see the legislature do and when?
So there are two different approaches. Senate Bill 1530 was an economy-wide approach. I still believe that's the right approach, but the tools available to me as an executive through executive action are by sector reducing greenhouse gas emissions. What I don't have the ability to do as the executive is create a carbon market. In terms of whether the legislature will move forward on a cap and trade approach, that is certainly in their hands at this point in time. But these young people have been waiting for years. They deserved action. I committed to Oregonians in July of 2019 that I would take executive order if the legislature failed to act, and I am keeping my commitment to Oregonians.
Governor, 1530 has some provisions to protect trade-exposed businesses. Does this order have any similar provisions?
Look, I'm very committed that we can continue to tackle climate change as well as continue to grow our economy. I've been working collaboratively with a number of businesses across the state that are committed to reducing carbon emissions, and I will continue that work, and I will ask my agencies to do that as well.
Governor, will there be an analysis of the economic impact on Oregonians as a result of this order?
I anticipate that that is one of the factors that will be taken under consideration through the rulemaking process.
Governor, one of the issues that came up at the E-Board yesterday was whether the EQC and DEQ would have hearings on the rulemaking process throughout the state. Is that something you will ask them to do?
I will certainly support that. They are required to follow the Oregon law in terms of rulemaking. I expect them to follow the law, but I would hope that this rulemaking process would be, of course, transparent, that it would be collaborative, and it would be inclusive of all Oregonians' voices.
More questions from members of the media?
Are you going to suggest this for what is expected to be a special session, that something on climate be in the special session, or that the special session only deal with budget and other things?
Look, in the midst of floods in eastern Oregon, drought in southern Oregon, and a global pandemic, Republicans walked out of the state. I find that behavior unconscionable, and I believe that voters deserve folks to show up for them, someone to show up for them in the building.
So what about a special session? What would this be on your agenda for a special session?
This particular,
Would climate change legislation?
I'm going to continue to tackle climate change with every tool that I have in my toolbox. I think this executive order is extremely bold and aggressive. Whether or not the legislature moves forward on climate change, it is in their hands at this point in time.
Governor, one coronavirus question to ruin the party. There have been cases that have been announced with county health officials not disclosing whether people are hospitalized or not. It took the Oregonian 2 days of questions to find out the number of tests that remain in the state stockpile. Is that the type of transparency that folks can expect? Has there been direction to not answer questions like the testing stockpile?
Look, I am very committed to making sure that Oregonians receive as much information as possible. As you know, I've been giving daily updates, and certainly my team has as well. OHA will update the numbers later this morning. Right now, I have 14 presumptive positive and 165 negative, and the Oregon Health Authority is telling us they have the kits that they need. There are new supplies being delivered from the CDC today. This is a balancing issue. I know that one of the families impacted, that both media and neighbors have showed up on that family's doorstep. Not only is that a violation of their privacy, it interferes with our public health officials to do their work. So I think it is critically important that we maintain families' health privacy in this state, and I'm committed to doing that.
Further questions?
I have one. Would spending money defending the executive order in court be better spent or reserved elsewhere, like protecting against spread of the virus?
The short answer is no. But if opponents to my executive order are really concerned about the costs of litigation, particularly Republicans, they should have stayed in the Capitol and completed their work and done their job. Anything else? I think we'll end it on that. Thank you all very much.